So today I am going to talk about ashwagandha, which has become feared in some corners of the internet and revered in many others. That rhymes. I have a lot of experience with ashwagandha. I have been taking ashwagandha on and off for the best part of a decade. I have tried a lot of various forms of it. I prefer the patented forms, which I'm going to discuss today. But one thing I would like to discuss are the side effects of ashwagandha and whether ashwagandha is potentially right for you. Now, firstly, this is not a video which is intended to encourage you to take anything, diagnose anything. Speak to your doctor, speak to your health coach, speak to whoever oversees whatever it is you do. But take this with a grain of salt and as educational advice only, blah, 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 legal disclaimer, not a doctor, so on and so forth. A pervasive myth around ashwagandha, and I'm going to call it a myth, and I'm going to explain why I would call it a myth as opposed to a hypothesis, because I think a hypothesis is a stretch, is that ashwagandha impacts the serotonergic system. And fortunately, the study for this is freely available on the internet, so you can pull it up if you would like. You can find it linked on Examine. It's a bit difficult to find because it's not spelled ashwagandha, it's spelled asvagandha with a V. The study was performed in 1998, and it involved giving rats for 4 to 8 weeks 100 milligrams per kilogram of ashwagandha. Now, this is of an extract form. And for reference, this would be the equivalent of, I don't know, if you're an 80-kilo male taking 8,000 milligrams of ashwagandha per day. The highest studied dose in humans is 600 milligrams. That's not the ridiculous part. The ridiculous part is that this study involves giving these rats 400 milligram equivalent, 5 milligram per kilogram, of 5-MeO-DMT, which is one of the most potent psychedelics in the world. A breakthrough consciousness splitting dose in humans is about 50 milligrams. So this would be the equivalent of about 800 milligrams for an 80-kilo male. And it is measuring the way that the rats shake themselves dry after getting them wet. And it notes that because 5-MeO-DMT works on certain serotonin receptors, and these rats shook themselves dry in the same way after receiving ashwagandha, that therefore ashwagandha alters the serotonergic system. This is nonsense. This is a stretch of a study. And to extrapolate that this means that ashwagandha is having these effects in the human brain, I think is asinine. But you guys can go on Google, you can read the study yourself, and you can come to whatever conclusion you may come to. But I think the assumption that this is fact is bollocks, to put it politely. So, is ashwagandha impacting the serotonergic system? Maybe. It's possible, but it's far from proven. What we do know that ashwagandha does, it is a very potent positive allosteric modulator of the GABA A receptor. Now, this is the same mechanism of action as benzodiazepines, as well as progesterone, allopregnanolone, and a few other herbal supplements which are promoted as sedatives or anti-anxiety or anti-stress supplements. And one of the issues which is reported by some users of ashwagandha on the internet is that ashwagandha leads to symptoms of anhedonia. And anhedonia, depending on how you look it up, is described as a form of depression or a mental state where you don't really feel any pleasure. And this to me makes sense that if someone who is not suffering with an underlying issue, an underlying root cause pathology that would lead them, to being chronically stressed, such as chronic injuries or um, certain circumstances in life, we will say, it makes sense that if you sedate them too much, that they'll feel like crap. This makes sense to me. So, should everyone on TRT be taking ashwagandha? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Can everyone in the world benefit from taking ashwagandha? No, absolutely not. Can everyone benefit from using it as a sleep aid for this mechanism of action? I don't think so. I think it's too strong for a lot of people. But is there a cohort of men and women, but this video is directed to men, Who could benefit from using ashwagandha as a part of their protocol? I think absolutely. And what I have found is that men who have had chronically elevated cortisol levels, as well as often chronically elevated prolactin, and an identified root cause which is often intractable, meaning it can't be resolved, as a root cause for this chronic either psychological, biological stress, ashwagandha is not only very well tolerated on average, but it is reported to be a game changer for their mental health, physical health, sleep, cognition, energy levels, just about everything that they're dealing with. Because in a stressed male, if you reduce his stress, his energy levels increase. And one of the most common things that I see as ailments in people is high levels of stress. So if you fall into this category and you have consistently elevated levels of these stress biomarkers and you are dealing with what people would describe as learned fear, anxiety, stress, generalized anxiety, performance anxiety, social anxiety, whatever label you want to slap on it. I am not saying to run out to iHerb or Amazon or your local supplement store and get yourself some ashwagandha and throw it down your throat. I'm saying that it may be something that you could benefit from looking into. But obviously, you should discuss this first with whoever is taking care of your health. Now, if you do feel like going down the ashwagandha route, sorry, there's a couple of things I would recommend looking at. One is using a patented extract. Now, there's a few out there. Shodan is the newest one. But the ones for me that are most tried and true is Sensoril and KSM 66, and my preference is towards KSM 66. Has the most human studies, and it is most consistent with how it was prepared traditionally. And you can get this from various manufacturers such as Jarrow or NutriBiolabs. They both make a great KSM 66 product. That you can know that you're getting a consistent amount of the bioactive ingredients which actually cause the effect that we're looking for. Now, I'm also a fan of the Paradise Herbs product, which is not a patented extract, but it is very effective and it doesn't have any fillers in the capsule, which I think is fantastic. And you can get these in capsules ranging from 250 milligrams up to 600 milligrams per capsule. The studied dose, and you can go on the KSM 66 website and look at this, tends to be about 300 milligrams twice per day. And I have found that larger guys or guys with more consistent issues with chronic injuries or stress can benefit from up to 600 milligrams of ashwagandha twice per day. There are other supplements and there are other tools in the toolbox which also work for the same thing. And I have found that ashwagandha is the most effective out of these in terms of milligram per milligram. But that could also be why it can lead to negative side effects because it can overdo the solution to create another problem in and of itself, which is too much sedation, too much GABA activity, which could potentially offset or downregulate the activity of dopamine in the brain, potentially. Other things that work well in synergy or as an alternative, theanine. You can even push this up to even 800 milligrams of theanine. Theanine is fantastic. It's just often underdosed. Magnesium citrate, tried and true. 400 milligrams of magnesium before bed or in divided dosing. There are other botanicals which work well for some people. Lemon balm and passion flower I find are the most effective consistently in practice, at least for my clients. And two of my favorites, which I've actually done a lecture on the TRT and hormone optimization channel on, are phosphatidylserine. Now, I'm not going to spell that. You can type PS100 into your browser and you can find, again, patented extracts, not extracts, patented forms such as Serenade or Sharp, which are my preference. Doctor's Best and Jarrow make those varieties. You can also find isolated phosphatidylserine from Thorn. And if you're in the States, that's a more economical option than if you are in a country such as Australia and Europe. It's a bit expensive in this part of the world. And CBD, which also works fantastically in synergy with these other ingredients. But the one that shines the most on its own for modulating cortisol and reducing subjective stress, as seen in the studies on KSM 66, is ashwagandha. So always proceed with caution when using botanicals. Always proceed respectfully when using Ayurvedic medicine like ashwagandha or even traditional Chinese medicine if that's what you're going to use. But do understand that this can be a very useful tool in the toolbox for a lot of guys. And I think the conclusion that ashwagandha negatively impacts the serotonergic pathway is unfounded. And frankly, I think it's untrue. And I would be happy to debate anyone on the merit of that study if they'd like to have a discussion on either my YouTube channel, other YouTube channels that I'm attached to, or your YouTube channel. So, the last point that I will make around stress is that the first thing that we need to look at is what can we do, not what can we take. And I think far too many people in the biohacking sphere, and I fucking hate that word, but I think it's a good word for what it is, are either consciously or unconsciously immediately resorting to the shortcut rather than trying to fix the root cause behaviors or thought processes that they're trying to solve. For example, if you have a supplement cabinet that is absolutely loaded with every natural sedative under the sun, but you are not partaking in some form of daily mindfulness activity, yoga, stretching, mobility work, breath work, some kind of conscious form of de-stressing or sleep hygiene, or just trying to resolve the root cause issue of whatever's fucking stressing you out, you're not only barking up the wrong tree and being lazy, but eventually your body is just going to reach homeostasis with you trying to sedate yourself with supplements, and that issue is going to come back tenfold, especially if you try to withdraw the sedatives, which you've been quelling that anxiety with for months or even years. So don't just rely on any one supplement or supplement stack. Don't try to fix what's going on up here with things that you're putting in here, to put it very simply. You've got to meet the medicine halfway. You've got to do the work. And the advantage of using these supplements and the way that I think people should be using these supplements is to use them to act as a compounding effect or a multiplier for the work that you're doing to try to resolve the reason why you started taking these in the first place. I.e., fix your shit, or at least try, and use the supplements to enhance that process or to further the outcome. Hope that helps.